Hello and welcome to the C3 Method Patreon weekly Q&A with your host Robert Poletic. Our goal is to educate you on everything health and fitness related with a clear, concise, and customized approach. We want you to know what you need to know and how to apply it in a way that fits you best. So this is the Patreon weekly Q&A for the week of May the 26th, 2025. So we're going to go through some Patreon member questions. If you would like to submit questions, you do have to be a Patreon member. You can find us at patreon.com/C3 method, and the 3 is spelled out THREE. So thank you if you do that. And along with being able to submit questions for the weekly Q&A, we have training programs, nutrition education, a bunch of other kind of benefits. I want to start doing more nutrition education, training education videos based on member questions. So we'll have this weekly video to do questions, Q&A. And then I want to also start to have more interactive where I'm in a gym answering questions or up in our kitchen doing some more food stuff. So if you have anything you would like to see in like a training related video in a gym or nutrition related to cooking or anything you'd want to see in a kitchen, just let me know. So I'll call those like maybe lifestyle videos. So that way it's a little more of an interactive way to learn. I know a lot of people have actually said they enjoy these weekly Q&As because it's a fun variety of questions and it's in a sense a long form podcast or video or auditory, whatever. So they like this, but then I have had people also say they like the other types of educational content. So just let me know. My whole goal of the Patreon service is to provide whatever it is that you would need in order to get a healthier and happier life. So you tell me, and that's what I'll do. And if you don't tell me, I'll just take a bunch of guesses, and hopefully that helps as well. So let's get into this week's questions. So the first question we have is, if I'm tracking my calories and I've gotten to the end of the day and am way behind, should I make up those calories or skip them since it's late in the day? How late is too late to eat? Okay, well, if you're one of my clients, what you're going to find out is we do track our calories and protein per day. For each client, it depends on kind of the method and approach that fits them best. Often we'll use nutrition apps like MyFitnessPal or Chronometer or things like that. But I have a ton of clients who don't do that because they find that restrictive, and maybe that was an issue they had in the past that caused them to fail quote unquote diets before. But we do some way, there's other methods, but we do some way of being aware of how many calories we consume in a day. And there's generally going to be a range. Sometimes the range is small, sometimes the range is big. Again, depends on the person, depends on the goal. And then we also track our protein. We want to make sure that we have enough protein within the calories that we consume to meet our goals. Now, the calories and protein, we do track per day, which would be, in a sense, a 24-hour time clock. However, there's another goal. So the first goal is calories, the second one's protein. The third thing I have them focus on is distribution, meaning when do we have our calories, when do we have our protein. So you can say timing, but I like the word distribution because it kind of hits a little more pinpointed to what we're trying to do, is we're trying to distribute the calories and protein evenly throughout the day. Now, there are more advanced approaches in which it isn't even, but for most people, they undereat during the day, they overeat at night, and that causes a lot of the challenges and struggles that they're feeling and facing with blood marker health, with the way they look, the way they feel, the way they perform. So getting the calories and protein more evenly distributed throughout the day is very helpful for a lot of reasons. Now, our goal with that is to match what our body needs. So give our body what it needs when it needs it. That's kind of the approach. If we get to the end of the day and we are way behind on calories, it isn't optimal. So I'm going to give you the answer, but it doesn't mean, don't address this, don't fix this, don't try to figure out why you're behind. You absolutely 100% want to figure out why we were behind, make adjustments, and then do that. I was about to say do better, but sometimes people don't like that phrasing. So we don't want to get behind. That's the goal. So I'm going to tell you what to do when you're behind, but your goal is to not get behind. Make adjustments. Don't say, oh, okay, well, if I get behind again, I can do this. Bullshit. Say, crap, I got behind. Let me try my best to not get behind again. So what we would do in this case is you do go ahead and eat the calories, you eat the protein. And calories, I would aim for the minimum range. So maybe your calorie range is 2,000 to 2,400 calories. And right now you're only at, say, 1,000. Okay, 1,000 calories at the end of the day is a lot to eat. But is it helpful to make sure that our body got what it needs? So that way it doesn't start to protect body fat and fight against fat loss? Yes. Is there a momentary surplus and maybe you're going to store some of that surplus as body fat? Yes. But it's helpful for the long term because the body doesn't go to bed saying, oh my gosh, I did not get what I need. I had to use a lot of body fat. This is really risky. This was not ideal. If I have to do that all the time, I'm going to run out of body fat. I'm going to run out of protection for my organs. I won't do that again. So let me reduce how many calories I need. So it starts to reduce its calorie allocation to non-essential processes, such as growing your hair or skin or nails, which is an example I use all the time, but it's a pretty relatable example. So if we underfeed the body, it starts to say, well, you're giving me so severely less than what I need to protect myself. And this is an extreme language, extreme case, but it does happen. And the modifications that the body makes for that aspect, like in relation to quote unquote protecting body fat, does happen. It happens in micro adjustments every time we screw up our timing. And those micro adjustments add up over time. And then that causes the body to have like a protective mechanism built around body fat, which is why often when people don't eat a lot of food, but yet they are not in the body composition they want. They feel fatter than they really want to be, but they're like, I don't really eat anything. Like, I don't understand. Like, I don't overeat, but yet I'm fat. Well, it's because we inconsistently eat. The body then protects body fat. So it won't let you burn off all this body fat because of all the food you're missing. Because then what happens if you miss a meal? The body doesn't have the energy it needs to run your organs and you die. So in a sense, whenever we severely underfeed ourselves, we make fat loss harder in the long run. So if you get to the end of the day and you're significantly behind, maybe you've only had half your calories, we do want to get more of that in. Now, our BMR, which is our basal metabolic rate, is how many calories your body needs just to do daily functions, run the organs, stay alive. That's roughly around 60 to 70% of your total caloric need, depending on your physical activity and whether you weight train or not. So let's just say that it's, say, 70% of what you need. Well, if my target window is 2,000 to 2,400, this is the catchy part. Is that target window set up for maintenance? Is that target window set up for surplus? Is that target window set up for a controlled deficit, meaning maybe a fat loss deficit? So really, maintenance calories might have been 2,600 calories, and we already have you at, maybe a 10 to 20% decrease, a deficit. And then if we're like, okay, well, I know my BMR is only 70%, so I really only need 70% of my calorie window. No. We need 70% of the maintenance. If our calorie window was already in a 10 to 20% deficit, then we would actually not need only 70% of the window. We actually need a higher percentage of the window. So there's a lot of nuances when it comes to figuring out, okay, if I'm 800 calories behind, for example, how much of the 800 do I actually need to eat? There is an answer, but it's for each individual, and I would have to answer that for each individual. So what I would recommend is just eat that deficit, like eat the gap. Get to the bottom of what your normal calorie range would be. So if the normal example was 2,000 to 2,400, only eat enough to get to 2,000. Don't go all the way to 2,400. So eat to the minimum. Make sure you get your protein in that you need to hit the minimum protein. And then make adjustments, figure out how you got behind, and then try not to do that again. So really long-winded answer is eat to make up to the bottom of your calorie window. Make sure you get your protein in there, and then work hard to figure out why we got behind, how we got behind, and how we can adjust for that. Don't use this answer as a fail-safe of like, oh, well, Rob said, anytime I get behind, I got to make sure I make up those calories. No, Rob said don't get behind. That's the answer. Don't get behind. And then when they asked how late is too late to eat, there isn't a too late in the sense that we know what our body needs throughout the day. And if we're behind, just make it up and then start the next day again. If we trying to think, like, their phrasing would be is when is too, like, how late is too late to eat, meaning if I eat this late, like X late, does that mean it's all going to go to body fat? Well, there's going to be a higher percentage of it going to body fat if you've under eaten all day and you're eating a bunch of calories at night. Yes. So often people ask, like, assuming there's a perfect answer, meaning like I screwed up all day. What do I do at night so my screw ups during the day didn't affect me? I'm sorry, there's not an answer for that. If we screwed up, we screwed up. We're just trying to mitigate and like control the degree of it screwing us up. We can't just hit a magic button at the end of the day and all of a sudden everything we messed up during the day, didn't matter. That's not how that works. So how late is too late to eat? There isn't a too late to eat. Just get in your calories, get in your protein, and move on to the next day, and try not to get behind. Really long-winded answer, but hopefully that was helpful and had some good information in there. Next question. I often hear there is no bad food, quote unquote. Everything is okay in moderation. But is that true? Can I really eat anything, assuming I control the calories of what I eat? In a sense, yes. I would say the exception of that is alcohol. Alcohol is really not good for you. It doesn't really do a lot of good things. Actually, I don't know. People will say, like, oh, there's resveratrol in wine, It's like, yeah, but you can also just take a resveratrol supplement and or get it through other foods, like fruits and things. But alcohol really doesn't have a ton of benefit to us. It has a lot of negatives. It's essentially a poison that we put into our body. And often the benefits that we feel are actually like a poisonous effect of it. So it's like if you lick a frog to get high. It wasn't like, it's healthy. You licked a frog and you got high. Being high was a side effect of the poison, the toxin. Often the things we quote unquote benefit from alcohol are more so like an effect of a poison. It's not like it's beneficial. But when it comes to like regular foods, like say ice cream, pizza, things like that, yes, for the most part, if you control calories, you're not going to see much of a difference in regard to like weight change. You will see a difference in body composition, and you will see a difference or feel a difference experientially. Meaning, if I eat stuff that's really high sugars, but I control my calories, maybe I won't gain a bunch of body fat, but I'm going to have real high energy during the day, but then really low periods of energy during the day. I'm going to be super moody. I'm probably going to feel like crap. Maybe I'll have digestive problems. Like a lot of people will drink like calorie-free like diet drinks or energy drinks, and that can cause a lot of gut distress. So maybe you'll have gas and bloating. It doesn't mean you're going to get fat, but it does mean you're not going to feel good. And the same thing, like when we eat a lot of junky type of foods, sometimes the food digests faster by the time we need the next meal. So then we get to the next meal and we're super hungry. We end up overeating. So there's a lot of experiential components involved with what we eat. But can you control body weight and eat, everything quote unquote in moderation? Yes. But if you want to maximize performance, if you want to maximize body composition, muscle mass to fat mass, and you want to maximize how you feel during the day, then no, there are specific foods that'll be best. There are specific foods that won't be, but that's also a little bit individual dependent. Some people do really well, for example, with high fiber foods. Some people do awful with high fiber foods. Some people love oats. Some people get gassy and bloated with oats. So there's not often a one diet fits all kind of approach. There are concepts that fit everybody, but the specific foods that are best for you would be specific for you. So can you eat everything in moderation? If you're looking at simple just weight control, yes. If you're looking at experiential, like how you feel during the day, body composition, performance, those kind of things, no, there's going to be better foods versus not as good for you foods. Cool. Okay. Next question. In your videos, you often talk about the importance of consistency in nutrition. Yes, I do. But I find that my hunger isn't always consistent, which leads to me not wanting breakfast some days and or skipping meals during the day. How can I be consistent when my body's desire for food doesn't feel consistent? Okay, typically the inconsistency of hunger is going to be related to the inconsistency of what and when you eat. Let's look at when, because it's a little bit easier. So if we undereat during the day and we eat a really large meal at night, you're going to wake up probably not very hungry because you just had a bunch of food right before you went to bed. Your body has processed a lot of that food while you're sleeping, and then it hasn't really gotten into this like long-term or extreme caloric deficit. So maybe it took, I'm just making up numbers. So it took 6 hours to digest everything, and you slept 6.5. Okay, well, for 30 minutes, it's like, I could use some food. So you wake up and you're like, I'm kind of busy. I got this going on. I woke up a little bit late. Food's not really that important. And you just move past it. You don't feel hungry, right? Now, if you were to flip and have all that food you had the night before, but you had it instead for a big breakfast the day before. Pancake, eggs, sausages, bacon, whatever. You had a huge meal for breakfast. Then, since you had a big breakfast, you didn't really eat anything for lunch. Maybe you got super busy at night. There was a bunch of chaos happening, so you didn't really get anything at night. Then you went to bed. Well, you're going to wake up ravenous because the last time you really had food would have been like 24 hours before that. The body burned through all that food, and it's had a really long period of time now, maybe the whole time you were asleep. It didn't have anything. So it's going like, where the hell's my food? Where's the hell is my food? Where the hell's my food? So if we end up overeating at night, we're not going to be hungry the next morning. So that can be one reason why you're not hungry for breakfast. And then, if we kind of skip lunch one day, we don't skip it the next day, we have a smaller dinner versus a bigger dinner, the more inconsistency we have with when we eat, you're going to have more inconsistency with when you feel hungry. Then the other component is the what of what we eat. If you eat foods that are high in fats, like dietary fats, they digest slower. So you're going to be less hungry less often. If you eat a lot of foods that are carbohydrates, like faster digesting foods, you're going to be more hungry more often. So maybe you had, you went out for lunch and, let's go for dinner. You went with a family dinner, you went to a Mexican restaurant, and you had a bunch of chips and guacamole and queso, which is super high in fats. And you woke up the next day and you're like, I'm not hungry for breakfast at all. Then you skipped breakfast, you had an okay lunch. Then that night for dinner, you're like, hey, I kind of felt bloaty and blah, after the Mexican meal. Let's just cook at home tonight. Maybe we'll have, just some chicken and rice, just a nice healthy meal. So chicken, rice, and some vegetables. Well, that digests very quickly. So compared to the Mexican meal, you have a low-fat meal. And now the next morning you wake up and you're like, holy crap, I'm really hungry for breakfast. What the hell? I wasn't hungry for breakfast at all yesterday. And it was because we had the high fat content Mexican meal the night before. And then the next night we had the low fat, really easy, fast digesting chicken, rice, and vegetables. So of course we're definitely going to be more hungry the next day. So our hunger will vary depending on when we eat, and it varies depending on the digestion rate of what we eat. Well, and that typically varies related to fats versus carbs. There are different fats that digest at different speeds, different carbs that digest at different speeds, but categorically, fats in general are slower than carbohydrates. And then, protein. The more protein you have in a meal, that slows it down a little bit. Less protein, less slow. So you might be more hungry after a lower protein meal than you would be after a higher protein meal. So protein really helps with satiation, like feeling hungry. So the more inconsistent you are with what you eat and when you eat, the more inconsistent you're going to feel with when you're hungry. Cool. Okay. Next question is a training question. Can I substitute barbell squats with Smith machine squats? Yes, assuming it's not a substitution for like a powerlifter or a strongman. If you're training for a sport that involves you doing barbell squats, well then yeah, you got a barbell squat. But if you're training just for like you'd be squatting for, I'm assuming, full body or like leg-based strength or leg growth. If we're doing it for just generalized leg strength and or leg growth, then that substitution isn't going to be very significant. That would be totally fine. And in some cases, for like bodybuilders or people wanting to build muscle, that actually might be the optimal substitution, meaning the Smith machine might be better. And in part, it's because you can decrease the instability of the movement So you're not limited by having to stabilize the weight, which means you can then push the muscles that are moving the weight further and further and further into fatigue and failure with less risk. So if I have to move something I also have to balance, I need to stop the set when I can no longer balance it. The balancing of the movement is going to fail before the ability to just move the weight fails. So if I don't want balance to be the limiter, I want to get rid of balance as an element. So switching to a Smith machine, which is a barbell that's guided up and down on rods, it can't move anywhere else. It just goes straight up and down. So there's no stability really needed. There's some in regards to like what you're doing with your hips and things, but it's severely reduced compared to a barbell squat. So in certain people, in certain situations, a Smith machine squat actually might be better than a barbell squat. But for other people in other situations like strength-based sports that involve a barbell, you're going to need a barbell squat. So powerlifters, strongman, probably want to do the barbell squat. Maybe even some athletes. That's probably more likely to be true for athletes. If you're looking at generalized leg strength, generalized leg growth, then the Smith machine would be totally fine. So that would be an okay substitution. Next question. If I want to add cardio to my program, when should I do it? For reference, I train midday, my office has a full gym, and I focus on strength training, but I'd like to still train my cardiovascular system. Should I add the cardio before or after lifting weights? If adding it at another time of the day would be best, I can, but I would prefer not to, given that it would be harder to be consistent with. Okay, so if I want to add cardio to my program, when should I do it? Okay, so typically, well, there's not really a typical. If it's explosive style cardio, meaning like sprint intervals, you would typically want to do that ahead of weight training. If you do jumping and explosive type movements, those are usually better to do before you do heavy resistance training, strength-based training. One of the benefits is it's excitatory, quote unquote, for the nervous system. So then you actually are more explosive when you go lift weights. So if I was going to do explosive sprints, explosive jumping, and then go squat, I'll actually perform better in squats if I do the explosive stuff first. If I'm going to be doing steady state cardio or just kind of monotonous wear my body down kind of cardio, I'd want to do that after weight training. Now, is it optimal to do it in the same session? It depends on the volume of the running and it depends on the volume of the weight training. Usually, if somebody can, it's typically better to separate the two, especially if performance in both is important to you. So that way you can have a meal or two, you can have some rest in between, you can then separate each element and then perform better in each element. So if I were to wake up, have a good solid breakfast, and go for a run, I come back, I get another meal in, work a little bit, 4 to 5 hours, have another meal, and then I go weight train, I'll do better in each individual activity. Whereas if I try to run and then weight train, the second thing is going to be worse because I'm being more fatigued. Or if I weight train and then run, the second thing is going to be worse, and my running would be worse. So if you do them back to back, typically the second thing suffers. So what I would do is if you want to do cardiovascular system, if that's your focus, you can play with a lot of modalities, structures in training. You can do some explosive running work and then weight train, or you can do the next day like weight train and then do steady state cardio. You can also build in aerobic capacity challenge into your weight training. You can do weight training circuits where maybe you do some dumbbell walking lunges, some explosive step ups, and then a sled sprint, and do circuits of that, and you're going to get way out of breath, and that actually is more weight training involved. So you're using weights and weighted resistance to create the cardiovascular stress. So you can play with basically those three structures: is high intensity, short duration, and then lift weights, or you can lift weights and then do low intensity, longer duration, or you can blend the cardiovascular challenge into the weighted training as a form of kind of getting the benefits of both worlds, is the aerobic stress and the muscular stress. So that's hopefully an answer. Depends on the style of cardio you want to do. They are all going to be equally beneficial to cardiovascular health. So it just kind of depends on preference, and if you're training in relation to maybe an eventual goal. So you want to add in running because you'd like to eventually do a marathon. Well, then the lower intensity, longer duration cardio is probably going to be better. If you have no interest in doing a marathon, you just think like, I don't know, it's supposed to be good for heart health. Well, then I would probably do the higher intensity, shorter duration, and or the weight training stuff, because just going out and running 3 miles sounds awful. So I would shorten it up, but increase the intensity so that way I get the cardiovascular stress, and just have less time invested. There you go. Okay. Next question we have is, how do you prevent self-sabotage? I feel that when I start to make progress, I tend to screw things up. Example, get lazy, too focused on perfection, too disappointed when I make mistakes. How do you prevent these feelings? Okay. For me personally, I have, there's a book called Elastic Habits. I think it's written by the author Stephen Guise, Guise. Elastic Habits would be a really good book to read. It's built off of a bunch of other similar concepts, but Elastic Habits is the one I'm referring to, I think, in this answer, is you can create different tiers, T-I-E-R-S, so different levels of what you would deem to be successful for each of your elements for the day. So for nutrition, maybe I want to make sure, hey, you know what? I want to make sure I don't know what's going to happen today, but I know I want to get into these calories, and I hope my protein is good. My timing's probably going to be all crazy and off, but heck, if I can get my calories to X or stay between X and Y, I would consider that a successful day. And then you might have level 2 would be, okay, did I get my calories and my protein? Level 3 is I got my calories, my protein, and I actually kind of evenly distributed them throughout the day. I ate a decent amount at the beginning of the day, a decent amount in the middle, and that way I wasn't overeating at night. So I have different levels to what I would consider successful nutrition. I have different levels to what I consider successful for training. And that can be per day or per week. Maybe I try to fit in 5 weight training sessions a week. So if I miss a Monday and I'm like, damn, like Monday's the first day of the week and that would have been great if I could get off to a good start. Oh, well, I know I can miss 2 days a week and it doesn't hurt me. So no worries. I'm going to keep going. The key for me is as long as I can feel like I made progress in some way per day, it motivates me and continues the momentum of making progress. So then the next day, maybe I can do a level 2 or 3 thing in this area, but maybe only a level 1 in this area. So I'm paying attention to nutrition, training. I have a bunch of other goals in life, like business goals, financial goals, relationship goals, blah, blah, blah. So I think of it as a holistic view of me becoming a better person. Is maybe I dropped the ball in this area, but I got this one and this one and this one. They were really good. And that's motivating. That's exciting. So I kind of track what I'm doing in each of my areas, and assuming that I'm getting at least my level 1s in most areas, I know I've gotten at least a little bit better, and that motivates me to continue to put in effort. So for me, that's what I've found is if I can make some degree of progress in most areas, I'm going to feel good that day. And then the days I can crush it and do the better levels of effort, awesome. That just fires you up and excites you to go even more. So that's how I avoid self-sabotage. Another component to it is I remember what I feel like when I don't do my best. So whenever I was like, oh, I could have trained today, I just kind of didn't want to. I laid around, I did nothing. Sometimes that's because maybe I've trained 12 days in a row, and my body's telling me, hey, jackass, you probably need to take a day off. So we're just going to make you feel kind of malaise and lazy today. And I'll recognize that. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm usually really excited to train, especially when I have the time to do it. I just don't feel like it today. That's probably because I need the time off. And I look and say, okay, yeah, it is true. I've worked out, 8 days in a row or 7 days in a row. Now, if I was feeling that way and I'm like, I haven't worked out in 4 days, what the hell? And I'm still too lazy, then I would get my ass up off the couch and I'd go do something. Because there's no my body's not telling me I need the time off if I haven't done anything in 4 days. I'm just being a lazy bum. So I think of it in that way as well, is I know what I feel like when I don't do the best versions of me. So when I don't eat well, I feel like crap. When I don't train, I feel like crap. When I would be, say make poor financial decisions, I feel like crap. So I remember that. I don't let myself excuse away that feeling and say that feeling's okay. It wasn't okay. I didn't like it. I even remember back when I was like 14, 15 years old, and would look in the mirror, and I'm like, dude, you're just a fat piece of crap, and you're lazy, and you're not doing anything to take care of this. You're not eating well, you're not exercising. Like, what the hell? If you don't like the way this looks, why the hell aren't you trying anything? So then, even now at 41, if I'm like, I could eat X and that's what I should eat, or I could eat X plus a bunch of crap I shouldn't eat, I'm not going to eat that bunch of crap that I shouldn't eat, because I remember what I felt like when I was 15 and I looked in the mirror and I hated my body. I'm like, well, eating a bunch of crap is going to put me right back in that body, put me right back in that mindset to where I hated the way I looked, and I was defeated. I was defeated by my decisions, defeated by my lifestyle, and therefore it led me to that belief of like, why even bother? Like, what does it matter? If I'm already a fat piece of crap, what does it matter? This one meal is not going to make a difference. It's not going to fix everything. But I do know that if I don't control that one meal, if I don't control that one workout, I'm probably not going to control the next one, the next one, the next one, the next one. So my decision for this one will determine, like, factor into my decision making skills for the next 1,000. So I need to control this one, because by controlling this one, I control the next one. By controlling the next one, I control the next one. So I layer in all of this mindset stuff. Does it make me probably crazy? Yes. But I'm happy crazy. That's, I guess, the good goal. So those are the things that I personally do to try to avoid self-sabotage. And what I would recommend to you and to clients would be similar things. Is track what you're doing, make sure you're putting in at least a minimal effort. So even if you have a day where you're like, I don't feel like doing anything, well, at least hit your calories. Maybe don't worry about protein, maybe don't worry about distribution, but at least do this. If you're like, I don't feel like weight training, go for a 10-minute walk. Set a timer and just go for a 10-minute walk. Maybe call a friend, watch a YouTube video and walk. I don't care. Like, whatever it is. Just what is the lowest level of something you can do productive? And at least do that. And then the next day you're like, I feel good. That walk was yesterday pretty good. It was actually nice to be outside. Maybe I'll go for a longer walk today. So action breeds more action, whereas inaction breeds more inaction. So when you skip things, you're more likely to skip things. When you at least hit a minimum of something, you're going to be more likely to at least hit a minimum of something the next day. And then maybe it grows into a little bit more than the minimum the next day and the next day and the next day. Okay. So hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully that was a good answer. Next question we have is, I use food as emotional comfort. I've known that I do this for years, but I can't seem to quit doing it. I have a stretch of time when I'll eat healthy, but when work gets stressful or I have family problems, I often find that I snack more during the day and at night. I try not to, but it feels like my body needs the extra food. What advice do you give your clients who struggle with emotional eating? Ooh, okay. One thing I would suggest is to track your calories, or at least have some idea of your calories. Because when people are stressed, you might notice you're snacking during the day, but it might be because you skipped breakfast. Or instead of a normal breakfast, you just had a cup of coffee and a piece of fruit. Whereas maybe normally you have the cup of coffee, some fruit, some yogurt with granola. Well, if you're not having the yogurt and the granola, that's a lot of calories. So you're just like, I'm kind of, this is a crappy day. I don't want to do what I'm supposed to do today. I'm just going to have coffee and, I'll grab an apple. Well, that's a lot of calories you missed if you didn't have the yogurt and the granola. So you are going to be more likely to, quote unquote, snack later in the day. It doesn't actually mean you're overeating. You might actually just be snacking to catch up to what you should have been eating. So I would definitely suggest being aware of your calories whenever you're feeling this stress, when you're feeling this emotional dis-ease, not disease. So when you're feeling emotionally uneasy, there we go. I would suggest that you start to be aware of your calories. Start to track them in some way, or at least a loose control of tracking, and say, okay, I'm stressed. Am I under eating or skipping meals, and that's leading to me having a lot of these small snacks? So be aware of that. Now, if you start to track your calories and you're like, okay, yeah, I'm stressed and I'm eating way more than I normally do, then I would recommend replacement behaviors. It is really hard to just cut something out of our life and then just do nothing in the void of what that thing did. So let's say, for example, at night, you normally would have 2 or 3 glasses of wine while watching TV. It's going to be hard to sit down at the TV and just not do the wine and do nothing else. Just sit and watch TV. you're likely going to need some type of replacement activity, something else that takes the action, the busyness that the drinking of the wine did. So now maybe you can snack on something lower calories. That would be a good way to get rid of the wine. Maybe something that has a little bit of protein on it. Maybe you can do a crossword puzzle or Sudoku or text some friends or look up jokes. You can read a newspaper, whatever the hell you want to do. Just do something while watching TV. I know the point of watching TV is to watch TV, but yeah, kind of not really. A lot of people do things while TV is on. So you want to replace. We don't want to replace emotional eating with like emotional drinking or gambling or some other horrible for us habit. So you want to try to replace it with something that's less detrimental to you than the overeating is. But often replacement is very helpful. What I used to do, like when I was dieting, and I've done a couple diets. Like one structure of diet was to lose 50 pounds in 8 weeks. So I've lost 50 pounds in 10 weeks, 3 times. One of the times I lost 50 pounds in 8 weeks. So just 2 months. So 4 weeks of this month and then 4 weeks of the next month. So 2 months, I lost 50 pounds. And it is really hard when you have hunger cravings to just sit and do nothing. Idle hands are the devil's playground, as they say, so don't be idle. Move. So I used to go for walks. I'd put in like an MP3 player. This is before I had a cell phone that had music on it. So I put in an MP3 player and I would just go for a walk. And it was a leisure walk. It wasn't like power walk. Wasn't anything amazing. But I would just put on some music, go for a walk. I would go get away from food. I often wouldn't take my wallet because I didn't want to have to walk past like a fast food place and freak out and buy the food. So actually, like kind of self-sabotage in a good way is I would make sure I couldn't make bad decisions. So I would get myself away from food. I wouldn't even take money with me, so that way I couldn't buy food. But that would be a suggestion: is find a replacement. Don't be idle. Do something else that maybe has a positive benefit or at least a neutral. No, I guess if it's neutral, it's not a benefit, but it's also not detrimental. So it just has a neutral effect on you. That would be my biggest suggestion. And then also, if you're dealing with emotions, we can replace, say, the physical space of what the food did for us. But how are you going to replace the emotional, comfort the food gave you? And that could be getting a therapist. There's, I think it's BetterHelp is a company that does like remote or virtual therapy. Might not be a bad idea. Go set up an account with them. Talk to somebody, who has some education in therapy. You can talk to your friends, but sometimes their friends are more screwed up than we are. So getting a therapist can be really helpful. You can get an audiobook, on Audible. Like I listen to a lot of audiobooks while I work out or walk or cut grass or do chores. And just maybe a self-help type book. Those are literally I listen to self-help and business. Those are the only 2 book type categories I listen to. That can help a lot. So you can replace the physical space of what the food was doing, but how do you replace the emotional comfort? Might be a self-help book and listen to a therapist. You can talk to a friend, like I said, but I would lean more towards the therapy because they're more professionals in the area, and maybe the advice they have might be better quality. So that would be some recommendations. I don't know if that was helpful or not. I think it could be if you apply some of it and experiment and you're willing to try some things out to try to make a difference. That can hopefully help. Okay, last question we have is a business question. How do you manage clients not showing up for training sessions? I have asked clients to notify me ahead of time, but most of the time they don't. Do you have a contract with your clients? If so, how do you enforce it? Would you actually sue a client if they didn't pay for showing up late? No, I wouldn't. And I have put in notifications. I don't have clients sign contracts because I'm not going to sue somebody to try to reinforce it. So I don't want them to think I signed this paper and he's not going to sue me, so I can do whatever I want. That's just a crappy relationship. So what I like to say is hey, if you're going to miss the session, let me know, because that way I can put somebody else in that time. and or I can use that time better. I don't want to be standing around for 15 minutes and then find out you're not coming, and now I just wasted time. So if you don't mind, if you're going to miss, let me know so I can help somebody else with that time, or I can help myself with that time. And then I do ask them, hey, if you can let me know 24 hours ahead of time, no worries, no charge or anything. If you let me know less than 24 hours, I can't really put somebody else in that space, so I missed the opportunity to make money. I missed the opportunity to kind of use that time optimally for myself, and I'm kind of missing it because of you. So if you're going to miss it, and you didn't know 24 hours ahead of time, it was like, last minute here or there. If you could pay for the time, I would appreciate it. But again, I kind of do that on a case-by-case basis. And if it's random, like I've trained the person for like 30 sessions and they got a flat tire on the way there, I'm not going to charge them. It's just, what would I do for a friend? What would I do if I was in that situation? So if it's something last minute that was outside of their control, I'm going to say, that stinks and I hope you're okay. I'm not going to charge them money. I'm just going to keep moving and rolling. Now, I have had people where maybe out of 20 sessions, they had to reschedule 12. And I actually have a client I'm remembering. So it got to the point where I started counting because I was like, this is getting too often. They're not paying anything. This is kind of an annoyance for both of us. Me more I'm concerned about. So they had to reschedule and or missed 12 out of 20 sessions. And I told them, I said, hey, I appreciate that you chose to work with me. I appreciate that for the opportunity to work with you and make the changes we want in your life. But we're missing so many sessions, we're not really making those changes. So I would rather take this time slot and work with somebody who's maybe more prepared to make this work schedule-wise, to optimize this opportunity. So I am going to cancel our agreement, cancel us working together. I'm going to take another client for this time slot. Now, here's what you can do with your food. Here's what you can do with your training in the meantime. And if you feel like you get your schedule more under control and you want to come back, let me know and we'll figure something out. But for now, I'm going to use this time slot for somebody who can better utilize it. So I will, quote unquote, fire a client if they've been missing sessions. That's how I tend to do it. As I've been very lucky to work with really high quality, great people in my life. And if somebody was missing sessions and I had to get to that point of kind of talking to them, they understood and they didn't give me much trouble. I have had some people, who did give me trouble. And those are when you just got to kind of put on the game face, put on the business face and say, I'm sorry if you're upset, but this is the best decision for the business. This is the best decision for whoever is involved in the business that the business supports. This is what we got to do. Bummer if you're bummed, but I'm doing this and we're moving on. And then you just have that conversation in a very calm tone, but you don't mince words, no apologies. You just, kind of do what you got to do. That is how I would handle it. Doesn't mean it's the right way, but that's how I would handle it. Is I tend to like to set up a personal connection with each client. So that way, if they miss the session, they're letting me down. They're not letting the corporation down. They're not, it doesn't matter. I'm allowed to miss this many sessions in this much time. I'd be like, well, it kind of mattered to me, man. Like, I was sitting there doing nothing, and I could have been doing something. So that was kind of a bummer, kind of wasted my day. And I'm okay setting that kind of relationship up. So that way, it adds extra reinforcement to be like, well, in their mind, if they're like, I just kind of don't want to go today. Rob's going to be sitting there. I know Rob needs the money. I know Rob could have used the time for somebody else. I'll go, So you want them to kind of like have that type of self-talk to get them to go to the times when they're skipping when maybe it could have been an option. But if there's times they miss and it was outside of their control and they don't do it too often, I don't really reinforce it. So there you go. So hopefully that was helpful. Good information there. And remember, if you want to submit questions for these Q&As, just join our community on Patreon under the name C3 Method. And you can submit any questions you want. You get nutrition program, training programming, and anything else you want. Tons of nutrition and training education that's exclusive, that doesn't show up on our YouTube or our Instagram. So you actually get like just for you kind of stuff, which is what I want to keep building out and keep reinforcing the benefit of having the Patreon membership. Then if you need anything else, you can find us on our website, which is c3method.com. And again, the 3 is spelled out T-H-R-E-E, so C-T-H-R-E-E method.com. You can message me on there, but also if you want to email me, it's just c3method@gmail.com. However you want to get a hold of me, I hope you can get a hold of me. So that way, whatever you need, we can get it for you. And then if you want to find more helpful information from us, you can find us and follow us on Instagram and YouTube for all of that information as well. There you go. Okay. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And I hope this was helpful.